I want you to picture something. You are a princess. Your grandfather was a king. Your cousin, your actual first cousin, is the Queen of England. You have royal blood, royal title, royal everything. And you are sitting alone at 32 years old with no husband, no prospect, and a family that has quietly decided you are the one problem they cannot solve. Not because of a scandal, not because of anything you did, because of how much you weighed. Queen Victoria, your own cousin, opened her diary and wrote word for word, "Her size is fearful. It is really a misfortune." That was the verdict, handed down by the most powerful woman on the planet, about her own family. Now, here's what I need you to stay for, because this woman was the one they wrote off, the one they pitied. She pulled off something that nobody in that palace saw coming. And by the time this story is over, you are going to understand exactly why history remembers her as the people's princess. Mary Adelaide Wilhelmina Elizabeth was born in 1833 in Hanover, Germany. Her father was Prince Adolphus, Duke of Cambridge, the youngest surviving son of King George III, which made her a granddaughter of a British king, and a first cousin of Queen Victoria. On paper, she had everything. She was also, by all accounts, a genuinely wonderful person. Musical, witty, warm, she gave to charities when most royals gave nothing. She laughed loudly in public when royal women were expected to be silent. Ordinary Londoners, working people, street vendors, crowds on the pavement, they loved her. But behind palace doors, the conversation was different. Because Mary Adelaide loved food. She loved parties, she loved living fully and loudly, and by the time she was a young woman, she weighed around 250 pounds in Victorian England, where royal women were expected to be small, quiet, and perfectly contained. Her family's conclusion was swift and brutal. No prince of any standing would ever take her. And so the years began to pass. Now, I know what you're thinking. This is just a sad story about a woman the world overlooked. But stay with me. What she did next, at an age when everyone had given up on her, is what genuinely shocked me when I first found it. By 25, Mary Adelaide wrote a letter to her brother. In it, she described what she called gloomy dreams of an old maidish future, coupled with a homely and dreary position. That is a woman who knew exactly what people said about her, and felt every word of it. Prince Oscar of Sweden visited in 1856. Spent time with her. Left without proposing. The King of Sardinia sent a formal proposal. She turned him down, horrified at the thought of leaving England. She wrote, "My heart is truly Protestant," which was a very polite way of saying absolutely not. Even Queen Victoria got involved, drawing up lists of available German princes. One by one, they all fell through. She was 25. Then 28. Then 30. Then 32. In a world where princesses were matched in their teens, 32 was not just late. It was a verdict. And then in 1865, the Prince of Wales and Princess Alexandra were visiting the Austrian court in Vienna. And they met someone, a minor German prince named Francis of Teck. Modest title, no real inheritance, almost no money. But by every account, strikingly, almost absurdly handsome. Described by those who met him as the most handsome man at the Austrian court. The Prince of Wales brought him to England. He and Mary Adelaide met in March 1866. A month later, they were engaged. She was 32. He was almost penniless. And neither of them cared even slightly. They married on June 12, 1866, at St. Anne's Church in Kew. And by all accounts, they were genuinely, unexpectedly happy. But here is the part of this story that nobody talks about. The marriage was happy. The children came. The love was real. And then they almost destroyed everything. Not through betrayal, not through scandal, through something far more ordinary and far more dangerous. They ran out of money. completely, and what they did about it is what makes this story genuinely unbelievable. Queen Victoria gave them an apartment at Kensington Palace. White Lodge in Richmond Park is a country house, a parliamentary annuity of $5,000 a year. It sounds like enough. It was not enough. Because Mary Adelaide had been raised in palaces, she threw lavish parties, she wore expensive clothes, she holidayed abroad, she hosted constantly, and Francis, with almost no inheritance of his own, could not keep up with her, no matter how hard he tried. When they asked Queen Victoria for extra funds, the answer was no. So the debts mounted, quietly at first, then not quietly at all. By 1883, the creditors were at the door. Real creditors, demanding real money. That they did not have. And a British princess, granddaughter of George II, I made a decision that would have been unthinkable in any other family. They packed their bags, gathered their 4 children, and fled England. Not just quietly, in disguise. They traveled under false names, the Count and Countess von Hohenstein, to avoid being identified by the people they owed money to. Destination, Florence, Italy. No, you would think that a woman hiding from her creditors, traveling under a fake name, would do the sensible thing and keep a low profile. You would be wrong. Almost immediately after arriving in Florence, Mary Adelaide quietly dropped the disguise, reverted to her full royal title. Because, and I am not making this up, she reasoned that the royal title got her better rooms, better service, and more attention. A woman on the run from her debts, demanding to be treated like a princess. I cannot tell you whether that is brave or completely insane. Maybe both. Florence was beautiful. The family visited art galleries, churches, and museums. Mary Adelaide's young daughter, Ma, was quiet, disciplined, intensely observant, and absorbed everything. The family spent 2 years in Florence with visits to relatives across Germany and Austria, living more cheaply than they ever had, waiting for the situation back home to cool down. In 1885, they returned to England, and this is the part that I think tells you everything about Mary Adelaide. She came back, and she got to work. No hiding, no shame, no quietly disappearing. She became the first ever royal patron of Barnardo's, the charity caring for orphaned and vulnerable children. A legacy that would later be carried by her daughter Queen Mary, then by Queen Elizabeth II, then by Diana, Princess of Wales. The public, who had watched the whole saga play out, welcomed her back as she had never left. And Mary Adelaide, with the instincts that had always defined her, turned her attention to the one thing she cared about most. Her daughter May, because here is what you need to understand. Mary Adelaide had spent her entire life being told she was not enough, not small enough, not rich enough, not the right kind of royal. And somewhere in those years in exile, in the debt, in judgment, she made a decision. Her daughter would not live that life. Her daughter would sit at the very top of the British royal family, and what she did to make that happen, who she called, what she arranged, and the extraordinary twist that nearly ended everything, that's the next 60 seconds. Do not go anywhere. By 1891, Mary Adelaide had one mission. She lobbied, she wrote letters, she worked every connection she had. She charmed Queen Victoria, who was notoriously hard to charm, until Victoria agreed. Mary was engaged to Prince Albert Victor, Duke of Clarence and Avondale. Second in line to the British throne, the woman they called a Misfortune had placed her daughter one heartbeat from the crown. And then 6 weeks after the engagement was announced, Prince Albert Victor was dead. Pneumonia at Sandringham. 28 years old. Gone just like that, the greatest achievement of Mary Adelaide's life had turned to dust. But Queen Victoria, who had come to genuinely respect May, her composure, her character, was not finished. She went to Albert Victor's younger brother, Prince George, now heir to the throne, and she told him to marry May instead. He did. They married on July 6, 1893, at the Chapel Royal, St. James's Palace. Mary Adelaide stood in that chapel and watched her daughter marry the future King of England. Every year of judgment, every whisper, every door closed in her face, every creditor, every humiliation in Florence. It had led here. Mary Adelaide died on October 27, 1897. She was 63 years old. She never saw May become Princess of Wales, never saw her crowned queen, never saw the two kings her daughter would raise, Edward VIII and George VI. Never knew she would become the great-grandmother of Queen Elizabeth II. But I want you to sit with something for a second. This woman was written off at every single stage of her life. By her family, by her queen, by the entire Victorian royal court. And she outlasted all of them, not by fighting, not by becoming someone else, by being relentlessly, stubbornly, completely herself. If you think this story ends with Mary Adelaide, you have no idea what her daughter did next. Queen Mary, the girl who grew up in Florentine exile, became one of the most formidable women in British royal history. And during World War II, she did something so extraordinary, so completely unexpected that the family she was staying with genuinely did not know whether to be grateful or terrified. That story is coming. Make sure you're subscribed.